In this video, we're going to do part 2 of gendered space. It's such a big discussion that it's been broken into 2, and our discussion is coming up right now. Hi there, I'm Andrea Adams. This is HR Shop Talk, where you get expert insight into HR. I encourage you to subscribe to the show by clicking on the button at the bottom of the screen or to the podcast to keep learning from my smart and experienced guests. Today, my guest is Alicia Bjarnason. Alicia is an expert on gendered space. She has a STEM background and got curious about why so many people were leaving that environment. So this is all very fascinating and a little depressing, but anyway, so how does this, but you can't take action if you don't know, right?
That's right.
How does it relate to the wider topic of diversity and inclusion?
Okay, well, thank you, because this definitely falls onto what I do and why I do it. So often as a society, there's a push at people, as us, as individuals, personal responsibilities. We've heard that a lot in the last year during the COVID crisis, right? So it is put on us as individuals to solve our own problems individually versus collectively. And so when it comes to something like gendered space, there's this expectation that it's up to you to fit. So it ties to that individual personal shortcomings that I mentioned. So there must be something wrong with me. Why am I not advancing in the workplace? Both men and women can say this, right? Why can I not solve the problem of childcare or elderly care? Like, what's wrong with me? Other women must have done this through history. No, actually, this is one of the reasons why we've lost women along the way, because this is hard. These are hard problems to solve on an individual basis. So I think within EDI, there's been this shift where we've said, wait a second, maybe it's not the workers that are the problem. Maybe it's our environment that we put them in. So this is why this is important. And I would say that anyone that's experienced these things, maybe due to gender, maybe due to anti-racism, there's been this you're trying to understand why you don't fit. And so one of the reasons why I wanted to go back to school is I wanted to understand, is it just me? And what's been so opening and great to understand this is that it takes the onus off the person and puts the onus back on as a collective, whether it be a company, a country, for us to start solving some of these problems. So let's think of another example. Companies should not expect a person with a disability to solve their own to solve problems on their own about workplace accessibility, right? Do we expect people with a disability or mothers with strollers to fix the sidewalks? No, they can't do that. That has to be done as a collective through our taxes. So we have to start thinking about these things as infrastructure. Childcare is infrastructure. I need childcare as much as I need a highway to get to work. You see what I'm saying? So we have to start thinking things at a bigger picture. And I know I've talked a lot about it at a more maybe government, municipal or federal level or provincial level, but companies are the same thing. They have to look at their company and they have to stop putting the onus on the individual, on the worker to solve these bigger structural problems. So what can companies look at? What can they solve? Like I just said, how policy that we write policy all the time. We make the assumption it's gender neutral. It's not. So you have to go back and look at the policies that you've written as a company, and you have to take a gendered lens. And so things like gender-based analysis plus, intersectionality. These are skill sets that we as a company can learn. And then you go back and you actually have to look at the policy through a different lens and see what's missing. So for example, if your policy is that while they're on maternity leave, do not talk to them, shut off their computer, shut off their cell phone, do not have any connection with that person for the next year, how does that person feel? Like if you're a STEM professional and you've gone to school and you love what you do, absolutely you want your time with your child and whatnot, but you don't turn that part of your brain off. So maybe just even having the option to have a connection to the company on your time when you're ready to do that is a way to engage that person to maybe come back.
Right.
So it can be these little things that we can do along the way. And the other big thing is the understanding of what an ally is. Like we hear all the time about men need to be allies. Why do we say that? It's because it's a power structure thing again. It's probably because they're the ones who have the power, right? So men may think, why is it on me that I always have to be the one that makes the change? Because you're the one with the power. You're the one with the platform. You're the one that actually can move over and give space to someone else. It's the same with your racialized coworkers.
Right.
As
for sure,
we're two white women here talking, right?
Right.
And so there's lots of times when we have to say, it is not my topic, it is not my space, this is not my experience, but I have a platform. So let me introduce this person who can better speak to that.
I often hear chats on or posts on LinkedIn that it's important that you can come to work being your full, authentic self. So can you remind us why that's important?
Absolutely. So if a worker, for example, encounters microaggressions every day, maybe it's because people are underestimating their ability due to their identity factors. So this can be due to varying factors such as gender, race, ability, and the intersections of these factors. How can they be their true, authentic self if they're always being questioned? Right? So if there's this expectation that women can't do that work, then how can the woman then go and do that work? There's also these, like, once again, gender norms, right? Unwritten rules. For example, there's men will be hired due to potential. Women will be hired due to past experiences. One thing that I can see happening is something like gaslighting, and it goes into that thing where if you're up against someone else who hasn't had a chance to reach their potential yet, there can be gaslighting. Then both person has readjusting how they are in a workplace, and neither of them are being their full authentic selves. But also, if you are struggling to find childcare, struggling to find elderly care, where's your mind? Is your mind at work? Maybe not. So there's lots of these little microaggressions or little things that can cause an employee to not bring their full authentic self to work. So there's lots of these different things. I'm just using gender as an example, and they're very anecdotal. Please don't take them as a given.
But I think they're familiar.
It's certain things that can happen. So what should we do as managers? What should we do as HR professionals? We have to create an environment where people can be who they are to work. So a company that has childcare, I know I can personally talk anecdotally about the time when I worked at a company, and I was the first person to ever get pregnant at the company, let alone need childcare. So I remember the stress that it was to try to find that. And then soon there was more in my situation. So they joined Kids and Company, which is a childcare place. Now, all of a sudden the workers know that they have a safe place to put their kids to come back to work. That is a structural change, a policy change that the company made within the 5 years that I was there in my childbearing years that made a huge difference. If you're dealing with elderly care, when are the appointments? They're in the middle of the day. So you have to take time off work so that you can take that person to the appointment. So to have flexible work environment where you can backfill the time later, for example, so that you can still have the full-time employment. Like, these are structural changes that have to happen at the company versus the individual in order to allow the people to be who they want to be. And it doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman. If they're not engaged at work, they're gone. So you need to create an environment where people are challenged and they want to be there and they feel like they're contributing in the best way and into the most authentic way that they are.
If you found this eye-opening as I have, click like. And the question for today is, thinking about these things, what do you think HR can do to help make change? Let us know in the comment section below. Okay. So we have talked about this too, and maybe you can summarize some of what you said, and maybe you'll have more to add. But what are some ways that workplaces can make a space more inclusive?
Well, equity, diversity, inclusion has to start somewhere. So the first step is to collectively agree that you want to do the work, because management or HR can say, we're going to do equity, diversity, inclusion. But if you don't have the buy-in for the company or don't explain to them why this is good for all of them, not just for some of them, you're not going to get the buy-in, and then nobody's going to care and nobody's going to actually do the work or do the learning, right?
Right.
So there's got to be an incentive of that this is good collectively for all. Now, this is not something that just anyone should lead. And so, for example, like in STEM, the STEM world that I'm in, do not put equity, diversity, and inclusion on the young woman engineer or the one racialized person that happens to be at the company. I see this over and over again that, oh, this is important, but none of us understand it. None of us want to understand it. So we'll just put it on you because it affects you. You need people with the power to lead this. And yes, everyone else can participate in it, but the leadership has to come from those with power that can make the change. And I like to say that we would not have a receptionist or an HR professional in charge of designing a bridge. So why are we putting a young woman engineer in charge of EDI? This is a real science. This is a thing. This is its own thing that needs to be understood and learned. And there is actually best practices. There is actually science and work behind this. This is not just some side project. So those are key things that I think that companies have to put in mind before they're actually going to look at this and even attempt to change their culture.
So HR is often put in charge of this. So how do we tackle it?
Okay, yes, that's a really important question, because you're absolutely right. EDI often gets thrown as HR's problem. Here, you guys take it, or you gals take it, usually, because that's another gender space,
yes, it is.
Right?
Yeah.
So you take this on and you make the change. Well, once again, how often are the HR professionals going to tell the STEM people what to do? That's not quite how this works sometimes. So once again, this has to come from those in power. HR can definitely be part of it, but that's not where the leadership comes from.
Okay.
And now, if you don't have a background in EDI, this is very specialized. And just like you would probably not have everyone in HR in charge of payroll, you should probably not have everyone just anyone in HR in charge of EDI. So this work, because it's a social science, it comes with a responsibility that those who are going to do this work, they need to have those expertise. So either you learn them in-house, and there are ways that HR professionals can learn this, whether it is going back to school, like I did, to learn this, or there's great companies out there, and you got to make sure you pick a good one that, or nonprofits. There's lots of nonprofits that do this. Where the learning can come. But also I think it's very important to hire someone who's not just HR background, but could be specialized in EDI specifically to bring on to the team. And right now I see that it's often put into the HR department. I don't know if that's always the best spot to put them. You might actually need this directly with management, then working with HR kind of a thing. So, because if we don't do this right, we can cause unintentional harm, because if you don't understand the power structures, you can overreact, you can alienate people. Remember, we all come with our different backgrounds, our different intersectionalities, or different identity factors. You can concentrate too much on one, alienate all the rest. This has to come together. Gender is a big one in it, but it has to be done intersectionally. It can't just be done with one factor in mind. And quite often people usually start with gender because it's the easiest one, the most obvious one to start with. And it's probably why that's the one I studied first. It's definitely the low-hanging fruit. But if you don't do this intersectionally, you're going to miss people along the way. And it'll take a lot longer to make the change that you want.
Okay, well, thanks, Alicia. That was a big topic and eye-opening. I did an episode on EDI, and that link is right here. Thanks for watching and see you next time.